and welcome to SMB Connect Spotlight. This is a platform for leaders to share their knowledge, and today's edition, I'll be interacting with an expert on GST. My name is Sandeepan, and I'm the founder of SMB Connect. We are one of the largest network of SMEs and business across India. SMB Connect provides knowledge stations and opportunities for businesses for networking. We have organized over 100 conferences and seminars across India in last few years. During the lockdown, which has hit businesses big time, we have moved our engagement on online version through webinars on fund management, motivation sessions, expert sessions. At the beginning of 2021, we have published an ebook, The Game Plan 2021 Vision 2025, which has received massive response. You can access this ebook by visiting SMB Connect website. So in today's session, we have Dr. Avinash Poddar, a well-known expert in GST, taxes, and compliances. Dr. Poddar is an advocate in the field of indirect taxes, commercial laws, and cybercrime. He is associated with MS Ashwa Legal Advisors LLP, an attorney and advocates as founder partner. He has authored many books in direct and indirect taxes. He is also a promoter of Tarun Group. He appears before forums including Supreme Court, High Court, tribunals, including NCLT, Advanced Ruling Authority, etc., regarding GST and taxes issues. He is an experienced arbitrator with Indian Council of Arbitration. So, Namaskar, Dr. Poddar. Thank you very much for coming here and giving your time. And welcome to this SMB Connect Spotlight series, where we discuss issues and challenges faced by small and medium businesses. And here we hope to address some of the issues, some of the questions they had regarding GST from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. So GST was implemented in 2017. We had a series under SMB Connect, and where you are present. It's been 4 years. What is your view? How things are going, and where things are going to go from now? Is because GST is still not stabilized in India.
See, first and foremost, the intention with which the GST was introduced, somehow the way and the manner in which the law has been let down and the problems which is being faced by the taxpayers, more specifically, if I have to mention, then the only point that I would like to add here is the virtual board, that is the common portal, wherein it was expected that everything is going to be online and we'll be working in an electronic mode, the online platform wherein anything and everything that has to be done under GST will be done through the cloud. Unfortunately, that could not happen. Initially, we started facing issues with the, what I can say, the urgent compliances that were supposed to be done, like filing of returns, making the payment of taxes, and all such kind of issues were there. For the normal compliances, then the government has taken the steps and they have tried to resolve it. But still, there are a lot of issues pertaining to the compliance and the portal part, which is more specifically or more particularly towards the compliance, like issuing of summons, issuing of orders, filing of appeals. All those stuffs are now slowly and gradually are picking up, and we can expect that within a year or two it may get settled. But yes, so far as law is concerned, it is an emerging law, it's a new law, it has its own issues. The drafting errors, the things which were settled in the erstwhile regime in central excise or service tax, are now unsettled to a large extent, I would say, not to some extent, but to a large extent. And therefore, the important aspect that we should keep in mind is GST will take its own time to settle down. But the intentions behind having GST in the country is very good. And no matter whatever time is taken, maybe it will take more time than expected, but finally things are going to turn in favor of businesses, and finally it is going to be in favor of economy. That is what I can expect and say as of now. Unfortunately, last 2 years have been very tough for the entire business, the entire country, because of the entire world, because of this COVID-19. But still, I would say GST as a law has its own issues. The government is trying very hard to come out with the issues and resolve the problems which is being faced by the taxpayers as well as the lawmakers. And therefore, I'm of the view that GST is certainly going to help the economy as well as the taxpayers in the longer run.
Great. I see one segment of the businesses, specifically the exporters. I see a lot of issues being raised by them. They are not getting a lot of their refunds are not in time. Their online IGST refunds, which is there against exports, things are not. They're not very happy, and to get them resolved also it's taking a lot of time, and then the huge amount of money is get blocked because of that. So, can you give your advice? How should a businessman who's predominantly on export business, a trader who's on exporters, how should he work to ensure that his cash flow doesn't get stuck in the refund process?
See, again, the same issue. It's also related to to more or less dependency on the common portal, that is the web portal which we have. In the initial stages, let's say July, August, September, October, and all those months, yes, I do agree that a lot of exporters were facing the issues. Reason being that they were not able to get the exports data mapped with the IceGate data. Why that was happening? Because the kind of returns that were envisaged and that was proposed to be there in the GST law have never seen the light of the day, and therefore there was a summary return GSTR 3B, and GSTR 1 was originally conceived and it was already there. So because of the non-availability and because of the lack of knowledge of the exporters or taxpayers, they have not entered the correct data at the correct place. Because of that, it was not mapped with the IceGate, and that became the major issue wherein the errors were committed by the taxpayers. And since we said that it is a system dependent and it's a system based process, and everything, whether it is refund, whether it is the sanctioning or the process, everything will be done online, and that became the major reason of getting the working capital impact or the refunds being delayed. And the government was very proactive. I think 3 to 4 times they have started a campaign of manual processing of refunds. Whatever issues were there, they tried to address that. Now over the period of time, in last almost 4 years, or now we are closing to almost 4 years of the implementation of GST, now it is more or less settled, I would say, to a large extent. Reason being, now we are aware where to show that, how to show that, and it is being mapped with the IceGate very easily now. And there are two options, as we all are aware. One option is we can export with payment of IGST, and the other option is that we can export without payment of IGST under LUT. And when I'm saying it needs to be mapped with IceGate, that happens in first case wherein I'm making the export with payment of IGST. So now things are very smooth as per the latest updates which I have, that if you are filing your GSTR 3B correctly, GSTR 1 correctly, and it is getting mapped with IceGate, then automatically within 7 days we are getting the refunds also within the time which is specified by the lawmakers. But yes, on the contrary, the exporters who are exporting without payment of tax under LUT have to make the application for refund, and then the application processing takes its own time, which certainly is taking what I can say, more time or a higher time than the prescribed time limit. So it is prescribed to be 90 days or 180 days, then it is taking much more than that time. Yes, I do agree for those exporters who are exporting under LUT, but for the exporters who are exporting with payment of IGST and they are entering the data correctly, shipping bill data and the other relevant details, then it is automatically getting mapped, because it is again a system based thing, and the refund is also being processed very fast. So we'll have to see an exporter whether he is exporting with payment of tax or without payment. With payment of tax, entering the correct data, refunds are smooth to a larger extent. I'm not saying for everyone, but to a larger extent. On the contrary, if he is exporting without payment of tax, then yes, there are certain problems which are still there, and that those problems are because of the intervention of the officer, because he is there who need to verify and who need to sanction that refund. And since there is a human intervention, it is taking its own time.
I think you talked about LU2, and may not be the right forum, but since and you're talking about this is going to be good for maybe next for the current interactions or current engagements. Now, what happened, and this is my personal experience, and we are a service provider. One of my clients, though based out of India, is part of is working from SEZ, and they have an exporter. So so we have charged GST, and it's now nearly a year or two that we've been applying for some kind of refund. Things are not
Okay.
moving. So how should we go about it?
See, again, I would say, because what I understand is that it has been a tax paid. The tax has already been paid, correct? So
Yes.
therefore the application need not be made as per the GST rules. GST provision says that once you export with payment of tax, there is no need to make any application. Just furnish your GSTR1, just furnish your GSTR3B, your refund will automatically get processed. Now, what I understand in your query is that you are not exporter of goods, you are exporter of services.
Yes.
Correct? So if you are an exporter of service, then also I think the same law will exist, and you can be made yourself eligible and you can get the refund on the provisional basis, 90% of the refund within 7 days and rest of the refund within 60 days or 90 days, whatever time limit is. If there is any issue, then I would suggest you write to the authorities for getting your refund processed. In case there are any further issues, then you should approach the proper forum. Maybe you can write a letter to the council, who can come forward and grant the necessary reliefs to you. But as per me, I think a simple formality of submitting a application to the officer may suffice, and you can get your refund.
That will be helpful. Let's see how it works out from now. We got some of the questions about I don't know this whether you heard about it, but from the industry, I heard that a lot of people are doing fake invoicing, and when I'm doing some business with, suppose I'm doing a business with you, and then I am a genuine businessman, I am doing business, but you are doing genuine services, you are providing me the right kind of product, but again, to a lot of different people, you may be doing invoicing just for putting the billing. How do a businessman like me safeguard myself from this kind of a situation?
See, first and foremost, there is no parameter, or there is no what I can say scale which can help us in identifying to what extent the supplier of yours is a genuine supplier. There is no benchmark for that. He might be indulged into the genuine practice of supplying goods. Let's say he has a turnover of 100 crores. Out of that 100 crores, he might be having a turnover of 50 crores, 60 crores, or rather 90 crores as a genuine turnover. For accommodating some of his friends or some of his colleagues or maybe competitors, he would have raised invoices without supplying goods worth 10 crore rupees. Now, when the department comes to this person, because the department might come to know that he has supplied only invoices only through that person who has taken only invoices, and in turn he might be also a person who is only taking invoices and then further indulge into supplying invoices. So therefore the chain comes into picture, wherein he will approach to your supplier who has originally supplied that invoice. Department will never appreciate, in most of the cases they will think that the entire supply of 100 crores made by your supplier is fake, because he is indulged. The department will have a contention or apprehension that he is indulged in absolute supply of invoices, he is not indulged in supply of goods. Now, there is a provision in the law which is section 35, read with the rules start with rule 56, which prescribes and specifies certain registers and documents to be maintained. So whenever you are receiving goods, you are supposed to maintain an inward register. you maintain that inward register along with all the copies of the invoices, the gate passes, the transport receipts, everything supported as an evidence. So once you enter that in your inward register, that inward register may go to your purchase register. Then from purchase register, it will be reflecting in your stock maintenance register. Then from there, it will, if you are a manufacturer, it will go to the manufacturing process and then will be turned into a finished product, which cannot be without the inputs of the raw materials. So therefore, you can very well establish on records, if your records are maintained as per section 35 read with rules of the GST, that yes, whatever you have received, whatever you are claiming as a credit and you have received is being reflected from the records that you have maintained. Then I would suggest, or I would be very strongly recommending that no need to panic, no need to worry. You can very well establish before the appropriate forum, maybe not before the adjudicating authority, but before the appellate authority or maybe before the courts. So there will not be an issue. So my humble submission, to be very precise, would be, if you are genuine, if your purchases are genuine and which is properly reflected and recorded in your books of accounts, then you can fight to any extent. And irrespective of the fact to what proportion and to what extent your supplier is engaged into the fake invoicing or issuance of the invoices, you are not going to face any final troubles. You will be certainly a part of that. You will be issued notices, you will be harassed also, you will have to face the adjudication process if the supplier is challenged. But finally, if the records are there, then I am of the view that you will come out of it and you will be finally given the relief for which you are entitled for.
What I can understand is, as a practice, you need to ensure that all your documentation and compliance of,
Absolutely.
of having goods supplying coming into you should be. Irrespective of things. Anyway, so one other thing again, between supplier and a purchaser, implications of not depositing a GST by a vendor. How does it affect? Now, this is something which is happening quite a few now because of the pandemic, which a lot of people are not able to sustain their business properly and are not depositing their GST. What should be the way forward for a business?
See, if I have to go for a legal argument, then there is one thing which is specified, let's say in favor of department. When I have to say, there is a provision in the law which says that if you want to claim input tax credit, you are supposed to satisfy certain conditions. Out of those conditions which you are supposed to satisfy, one of the conditions said that your supplier must have paid the taxes. Now if your supplier does not make the payment of tax, in that case, prima facie, looking into the provisions of the law, you become what I can say, ineligible to claim the input tax credit. But if you are a genuine purchaser, you have procured the goods, you have made the payment of the cost of goods along with the tax which he has collected from you, and then thereafter he has not paid to the treasury of the department, I am of the view that being a genuine purchaser, you can very well fight. There are cases which are in your support from the Delhi High Court, from Bombay High Court, from Honorable Supreme Court. There are multiple cases which are in your favor. So that is again not an issue. Further to this, very recently, D.Y. Bithal is one of the judgments of the Madras High Court, wherein the Madras High Court has said that you first try to recover this amount from the supplier who has actually supplied the goods, who has actually collected the tax also. First attempt should be from the department side, that recover from the supplier. Let us assume that the supplier has absconded. Then in that case, they will have to establish that they have taken all the efforts to establish that the supplier has run away and he has not paid the taxes. Then they can come to you asking you to follow the law, wherein you will have to say that yes, the supplier has not paid. Now coming to the compliance part, there is no mechanism till date. Although the GST law was conceived and perceived that it will be an invoice based law wherein invoice matching concept will be there, but till date, so far as my knowledge is concerned, there is no such concept being implemented. Although it is there on the records, on the papers, on the statute books, but it is not implemented. When I say so, it means that if a supplier is supplying to 100 people, and if he has not paid tax of all 100, then it's understandable. But if he has filed the return, it is being reflected in your GSTR 2A, and on that basis you are claiming the credit. The department also have no mechanism to prove that out of the 100 people to whom he has supplied, your invoice was unpaid. There is no such concept till date. So that becomes another argument wherein you can safeguard yourself, that you cannot say that my invoice was not paid. But being a bona fide purchaser and being a person who was not at all related with the supply, meaning thereby I was not having any connivance with the supplier, I was not having any adjustment, any setting whatsoever. So once you are able to prove that you are a bona fide purchaser, you have purchased from the correct resource, you have made the payment of cost along with tax, I don't find any problem in arguing this issue, and you can get in your favor. But certainly prima facie, the law is against you. If your supplier does not pay, then you will have to face the consequence and your ITC will be challenged. But again, if you are a genuine purchaser, you can safeguard yourself.
So a lot of people have started doing a process of withholding the GST payment to the supplier and checking it on the portal before making the final payout. What is your view about this kind of arrangement which has been done?
See, even then the fraud can happen. Reason being, I can show that in your in my GSTR1, wherein it will be reflected on the portal in GSTR2A to you. On that basis, you might have claimed the credit, but finally he has not paid the taxes because he has filed GSTR1 showing as 1 lakh as my total supply, whereas he has issued or he has filed GSTR1A with, let's say, 100 crores, wherein in GSTR3B he has shown only 1 crore. So therefore, you will be able to see your invoice also in GSTR2A. You will be able to see that he has filed GSTR3B also. But finally, the last point which is mentioned in the law is he must have paid the taxes against the supplies or against the credits which you are availing. So he might have not paid that. So therefore, don't worry about whether he has shown that or not. Now, so far as the amount which is being restricted or which is being retained by the purchasers, first I would submit it is absolutely illegal. It is absolutely illegal that you cannot retain the amount on the context, and you cannot put a condition that please show me a challan, please get the invoice reflected. This can be mutual. It cannot be legal, because you are bound to make the payment of cost along with the tax which you have agreed for, and you are claiming the credit also. So you cannot say that unless you pay the tax, I will not be able to make you the payment of the tax amount. It cannot be legal, but yes, mutually many of the persons are doing this so as to safeguard themselves. So nothing wrong in that. Practically, so far so good, but otherwise legally it is not correct. Legally you will have to pay cost along with tax, then only you become eligible for the credits. Even there is a provision in GST law which says if you fail to pay the total amount along with the total tax within 180 days, then you will have to reverse the credit what you have availed. So even looking to that circumstance, the retention of the amount of tax merely for getting the assurance that the supplier has shown your invoice does not in any ways legally help you, because it may arise a situation that even after showing the invoice he might have not paid the taxes.
So, Mr. Poddar, my next question we have received is there are people who have asked me. Now they send they do some job work. They send material through a delivery challan, and so they're asking, do you need to put all the GST details in the delivery challan, or do you have to send that separately, or can it work out without that also?
No. See, the concept of job work is that I am sending my goods for the purpose of job work to a job worker,
Yeah.
meaning thereby I am compulsorily required to be registered under the GST law. Now, when I am required to be registered and I am registered, there are certain compliances which are made mandatory on me, and therefore I need to issue a delivery challan in case of the goods being sent for the purpose of job work. Now, when I'm sending a delivery challan, the delivery challan per se does not have any format in law. GST law
Okay.
does not prescribe any format for any invoice or any delivery challan, nothing. But they provide the contents which have to be there, like the name of the job worker. If he is registered, then the registered number of his. If he is not registered, then no worries, PAN number and all those stuffs. So what I would say is, it all depends on you. If the e-way bill is required, e-way bill has to be generated through e-way bill portal. The minimum requirements or the pointers which e-way bill filing requires, at least those much details must be there in the delivery challan. Over and above that, if you want to place any further records, then I don't think there will be any challenge. So yes, if you are moving goods for the purpose of job work, then the minimum contents which have to be there must be there, and that includes your GST details, and that includes the details of the job worker also. So it has to be there, otherwise the department may treat that you are supplying the goods on the context that you are sending it for the purpose of job work.
So, Dr. Pata, you're talking about e-way bill, and there's a lot of changes are happening in the e-way bill right now. It is now become it's mandatory to a 50 CR crore company or turnover. Do you think it is going to be mandatory for each and every organization who are doing business in the next couple of years, or it is going to
I
remain
think
you kind of benefit for a small business who may not
I
have a
think
right account?
I think you are talking about e-invoicing.
Yeah, yeah.
E-invoicing, as per the original plan of the government, is going to be implemented, or rather they are implementing it on a phased manner, in a phased manner. So till date, I think they have made it mandatory for 50 crores plus, and they certainly are going to make it mandatory for all those suppliers or all those business houses or registered persons who are having a turnover exceeding 5 crores. That is what I have heard of, and rather they were intending to do so very soon, but because of this COVID and because of this economic slowdown, I think they have not done it, and rightly so, because those small taxpayers who have a turnover of 5 crores, 7 crores, 10 crores may not be in a position to comply with the requirement of e-invoicing. But yes, slowly and gradually, I foresee that everyone should start issuing e-invoices, because e-invoice is certainly going to help not only to us, not only the compliance part, but also the government to identifying the fraudsters. So therefore, e-invoice, certainly the government has a plan in their mind that they are going to implement for anyone and everyone, but slowly and gradually. It cannot be on one day. It will take its own time, because again the infrastructure is required. We have around 85 percentage of the taxpayers who are falling into the small category, so they are out of e-invoicing as of now. So to bring them at 85% or 90% of the total registered taxpayers is going to be a big challenge, and it is better to bring them on a gradual basis once your systems are stable, than to push everyone and then delay or further defer the dates. So but certainly yes, all will cover.
So, talking about e-invoicing, can you just tell us what is a small businessman should expect when it has become compulsory for him? Some an organization of 5 crores or 10 crores, with a
i
turnover
think
of.
I think next year 5 crore plus may be covered.
So, what should a businessman should do to be part to be ready for e-invoicing? Does he need to put an additional infrastructure? Does he need to have additional manpower? And what is e-invoicing? Maybe if you can just
See,
throw some light.
e-invoicing is nothing but you are using a portal from where you are generating the invoice, and thus that e-invoice takes the shape of the invoice which you are issuing till date to your vendors or to your recipients. Now So far as the infrastructure is concerned, I don't foresee that there is any requirement of additional infrastructure to be arranged. The only thing that you want to have or you need to have is whatever software you are using for generation of your invoices today must be linked with the e-invoice software, or you can use the portal directly. There is a portal of the government. You can use that portal for generation of your invoices, and then you can have that portal linked with the software that you are using for the purpose of your accountancy. Technically, I think that will be more than sufficient. Over and above that, nothing is required.
So the current account person who's managing the accounts for a business, who's maybe doing a job work or who's doing a manufacturing of some products and services, uh, can manage an invoice bit as and when it is implemented.
Yes, yes.
Great. Again, my last question. A lot of people who are not in the GST, so and they do trading also. Now what they're asking me is when they do trading and they buy a product which is already have a GST included, and they add some cost, their margin, and then resell it. Does they need to put any deposit any GST? Is there any compliance issue? Because when they do their own products and services, they don't charge GST because they're a small organization. But when they are trading it of a GST product, uh, they usually charge some extra bit. But in that, they're not paying any GST. So any compliance issue on that?
See, please appreciate that GST is a totally compliance based law, and in GST, once you are registered, then the liability arises. But what I understand from your question is that the person for whom you are asking this question is never registered. He is a
Yeah.
small vendor who is procuring certain goods, having a, let's say, a turnover of 10 lakhs, 50 lakhs across the year. He is procuring goods from a vendor who is charging GST on it, and then he is adding his margin and selling it off. Unless he is registered. See, the question may be answered in two ways. One, that he is required to be registered, but he is not registered. In that case, tomorrow the department can come, start proceedings against him, tell him that whatever sales you have, out of that sale, it is presumed that this is the product, this is the rate of tax, and I am calculating this tax liability for you. It is presumed that you have collected the tax but not paid, provided he was registered, he was supposed to be registered. That happens in a case wherein he is engaged into the supply and the aggregate turnover exceeds 20 lakhs, or in case of goods 40 lakhs. If the turnover exceeds that, even then he is not taking registration, then it's a different answer. But if he is not crossing that aggregate turnover limit and he is purchasing and selling something, in that case no GST to be deposited with any government, because he has not collected even a single rupee saying that this is a GST which he is collecting. He is saying that this is his margin which he is collecting. So on the margins which is being collected by such suppliers, the income tax needs to be paid. It is not the liability of GST which comes. So therefore no GST for those suppliers who are procuring goods and supplying to someone and adding their margin but not collecting GST and are not registered.
Fine. So before we say thanks to you, thanks to you, Avinash, I just last question. The current way where we are currently doing business with a lot of people are not able to pay GST on time. Do you foresee any kind of compliance issue with them in future, or is it how should they safeguard themselves, because they have intention to pay, may not have maybe the money to pay right now. Things are the focus is that the money may be going to pay to their salaries to the workers and all. How should they cope up to these challenges maybe in future when compliance team comes in or GST team comes in?
See, so far as the compliance is concerned from the suppliers end, we have also filed a writ petition before Delhi High Court, before Gujarat High Court. We are trying to pursue this and to persuade the government to extend the dates so that the date of compliances get extended, and therefore he is at some ease and get some relief that the tax may be paid after some time, and the compliance can be made after some time. It is not on the dates which are prescribed. Still, the matters are being heard. Nothing is being concluded. On few of the aspects, the government has already extended the dates. Now, so far as I as a purchaser is concerned, that my supplier has not paid the tax and therefore what compliances issue I can face, I don't see any issue being faced by me unless that supplier runs away. See, if he is paying after 6 months, after 3 months, after 8 months, after 9 months, finally he has paid. Law says that the supplier must have paid the taxes and the tax have been paid. Law never says that he has to pay the tax within the time limit for the purchaser to take the credit. So therefore, even if it is delayed payments, no worries. The purchaser is not at all in any issue. He can take the credit. He can very well take the relief and take the benefits. It is only with relation to the supplier, and we are trying to find out the directions of the court, wherein the court may intervene and they can direct the government also to extend the dates or to provide relief so far as the interest is concerned or late fees is concerned. That petition, rather, I'm happy to share that this petition was argued today itself. From morning till 2 p.m. it was being argued by us, and the court is very much, I would say, I will not say inclined, but yes, the court has heard us. Court has a sympathy that yes, the taxpayers of the country must be given such kind of relief, specifically when second wave is there and it is so dangerous and it has cost a lot of lives to in this last 1 month. Court is there, and on 24th again the matter is listed. Let's hope for the best that we'll be getting some relief for the taxpayers also, but for purchaser, no worries at all.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving your time. And I'm sure hope all our viewers will definitely find it useful, whatever information we have shared on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we conclude our session, I'd like to thank you all for watching this session of SMB Connect Spotlight. If you need to ask any questions to Dr. Poddar, please email it to us at info@smbconnect.in, and we will have this answered by him for you. Social media handles. Also follow us on our social media handles, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Insta. We have been updating a lot of data, a lot of information about the SME ecosystem. You can also register your business at localandvocal.online. This is the free listing where you can promote your business globally. Once again, I want to thank you for watching Spotlight, and do join us for our next sessions very soon. Thank you.